Are you saying my sense of humor is like sophomoric?
I am saying you
Like
are like a child.
I'm like a child.
And it's it's very
it's fair.
simple.
It's fair.
I use bright colors when I need to communicate with you, and
Yep.
it's okay. Welcome to A Cast with No Name. We're your hosts. I'm Jay.
And I'm Matt.
This is episode 55. This episode, we talk about our top 5 90s comedies. But first, don't forget to visit our website, castwithnoname.com, where you can listen to our entire library. Episode library. You can comment on episodes, write to our email. Also, thank you for listening. If you enjoy this show, rate us on Apple, rate us on Spotify, like us on Instagram.
Comment on anything.
So just
Yeah.
talk to us so we're not diddling ourselves.
Which Jay enjoys.
Regardless. but yeah. So top 5 90s comedies.
Right. We haven't done one of these in a while.
So last time was romantic comedies.
Yep.
And then but our last decade comedies was the 80s.
Yeah. So what did you have more fun?
Fun?
Did you have more fun compiling this list or the 80s list? Meaning, what decade do you think was funnier overall?
I don't know. I think it's a cheat because we grew up in the 90s. Technically, we grew up in the 90s. So
yes, we did.
We remember more of 90s than what we do of 80s.
Sure. And much of our sense of humor is probably informed from these movies. So there's there's a nostalgia to them.
Yeah, I think we're about a decade too young to be quoting Steve Martin all the time and
right.
all that.
Yep.
But there's a lot more comedies in the 90s than what I had initially remembered.
Did you do some Googling?
A little bit of Googling, a little bit of looking in my library, and then just randomly, oh my God, that was in the 90s too. That was in the because the late 90s to early to mid 2000s is just kind of a blur.
Yeah.
As all those just kind of meld together. But yeah, I think I had a tougher time creating a top 5 list from this decade than in the
80s.
Yeah. How about you?
I agree. Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't realize how many movies, because there was a lot of comedic movie stars from the 90s.
Yeah.
More so than I think in the 80s, and that's why, they were just coming out every single year. Like, if you were a comedic star, it seemed like they had a movie out with you starring in it every year.
Yeah.
It was the height of SNL, too, so it seemed like every SNL cast member had their own movie.
Yep. Yeah, and I feel like the there's some comedies from the 80s that are still good, but I feel like there's quite a few in the 90s that just kind of transcended decades, or maybe it's just because we're at this age to where I'm sure if we ask somebody that's like just graduated high school or that are in college, half these movies they probably haven't seen before either. So
right.
I'm sure it's just a generational thing. But as far as our generation goes, I feel like this is this decade is definitely the more formative decade as far as humor.
Yeah. Did you think that they focused more on story arc in the 80s? Not to say that the 90s movies didn't have story arc. They had a little bit, but I think because I watched maybe 7 movies that I thought would make the top 5, and it seemed like the arc was there, but they were more focused on the actual comedy, like the setup, punchline,
the gags,
and the gag, more so than the arc. Like those came first, and then the arc kind of came secondary. Like the arc wasn't as important as like the bit was, like that scene in particular.
So it's interesting you say that because my top 5, not so much.
Really?
Yeah, and I think I know what movies you're kind of referencing. But
are you saying my sense of humor is like sophomoric?
I am saying you are like a child.
I'm like a child,
and it's. It's very simple.
It's fair.
I use bright colors when I need to communicate with you, and it's okay.
Wow.
No, I get what you're saying. I was going to say the other way around, to where it felt like the 80s was more bits.
Okay.
And felt like...
Interesting.
But I'm sure every decade has those two things. So, you have things like, for example... like Austin Powers feels very for the gag.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, there is a slight arc, but then, but you have those in the 80s too, like Airplane. You have the bit movies are just the pure straight parody comedy. But then you have some softer comedies like in the 80s, like the Tom Hanks and Shelley Long.
Money Pit.
Money Pit,
Yeah.
to where kind of it's not even romantic comedy, but that's the arc is in the house. But there's so many funny moments in there throughout the movie that kind of carries it through.
Right.
Same thing with like Beverly Hills Cop. There's an arc there, but then you have some of that the comedy that's sprinkled in there. But the 90s, I think, had that too, to where you had those storylines. For instance, I mean, Happy Gilmore, I think, kind of played that line carefully as far as, there were some bits, but you had the overall arc. It was kind of more of the story,
right,
with humor sprinkled in.
You were wondering if he was going to save his grandma's house.
Yeah. Same thing with Friday, which is a serious story, but it's a comedy. Like you had but it didn't have those bits, but it had that character arc kind of thing.
Right.
So, but yeah, I found, long story short, I thought the exact opposite.
Fair enough.
Initially, or when I think about comedy, I always think of 80s comedy typically has a less of an arc.
And maybe you're probably right, and I just remember like the ones that stand out to me are ones that had more of an arc. Like you said, Beverly Hills Cop, Money Pit. Mm-hmm. Like they felt like the arc was there more so. It's serviced the arc versus servicing the gags.
But at the same time, we're also talking about different styles of comedy or different styles of comedic stories, to where one, like Scary Movie, is just straight parody. It's there, like in the epic movie, and Not Another Teen Movie, that kind of stuff.
Wow, you're really listing off these great movies.
Those fantastic things. Obviously, those are just there for bits, but and that's obviously parody and more slapsticky kind of comedy, as opposed to just straight up more drama comedy.
Right. Well, from your list, were there a couple that you hadn't seen in a while, or that you were shocked that it actually made the list? Or did you know going ahead, like, this is probably going to make my list?
There was one I knew that was going to make my list.
Right.
And actually, like, when I first started thinking about it, most of my top five ended up, my initial five, most of them ended up just staying in my top five. So as far as the criteria that I used,
what was your criteria?
I did not. I stayed away. I stayed away from romantic comedies.
Okay.
Because one,
we already made that list.
We already made that list. Mm-hmm. But that list that we made, that was Christie's and I's list.
Sure.
So my top five romantic comedies are actually different than ours together, because the way we went about picking them, it was, let's write down our favorite romantic comedies. We'll find ones that are both on each of our lists. Now we'll rank those. Right, so that's how we came up with the list. So
you're saying your list is wrong, Christy. Mine's right.
Yes.
I'll throw you a branch here.
I threw her several bones.
Because that's just who you are. You're just giving.
I'm a giving individual.
You are.
And
good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you, Jay.
So I took out romantic comedies because there were several from the 90s that are on there, but then I feel like most of my list would have been romantic comedies.
And you can create your own. I mean, that's a separate list.
Yeah.
It's its own category, right? Mm-hmm. Its own genre. Okay, so no romantic comedies.
So no romantic comedies, and I stayed away from, how do I want to say this? I picked movies that obviously I enjoyed, but movies that I still enjoy now as much as I feel like as much as I did back then,
or more.
Sure, more. Because some of them, because if you asked me in the 90s what my top five comedies were, it would not be this list.
The same.
And some of these I kind of grew to like, but some of these I also have always just liked.
Would Mr. Nanny be in your top five in 1995?
No, but there would be a lot of Kevin Smith. And
all right, yeah.
I honestly didn't even think about any of those movies except for Clerks.
Yeah.
when it came down to it. So, but
Mr. Nanny, Three Ninjas.
Three Ninjas Knuckle Up.
That's right, man.
But yeah, so that's kind of how I went about it. It needed to be something that I still would like to watch, but it was tough because there's definitely ones in the honorable mention that I haven't seen in a long time that I would still like to see because I remember them being funny and I remember watching them. But I think as far as like comedies, I try to steer towards the better movies,
right?
That I still enjoyed.
Yep.
But yeah, how about you?
Same. The number one overall criteria was it just had to be funny, just nonstop with the comedy, never lets up. Never
lets up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to do. That's how I started the list. Was okay. What movies they're just laugh a minute, and that's where it started. And then I was like, shit, that's a long list. I don't know how I'm gonna. Anyway, so I leaned towards what you were saying, no romantic comedies, and I didn't. I thought it had to be an overall good movie, like well made, not just Which I'll explain in a couple of my honorable mentions why. For that reason alone, like it's very funny, but it's not necessarily like technically it's not like a good movie with a, good arc or anything. So anyway, if it was a good movie, well directed, good performances, that kind of set the bar. That flipped it over the edge to making the list.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. You want to go first?
Sure. My number 5 is the award-winning. It's not. A lot of people don't like this movie. I just don't see a lot of people talking about it. But it came out in '96. It's directed by Harold Ramis. It's called Multiplicity and stars Michael Keaton.
Oh.
And
I'm not gonna lie. I've seen that movie one time, and it was probably in the late '90s. I don't remember it.
Yeah, and it's it's not. I don't know. It's got a 6.1 on IMDb. It's definitely not the first movie that people think of when they think '90s comedy. But I picked this because I like Michael Keaton so much. I watched the crap out of this when I was younger. So if you're unaware, it's Multiplicity is a man who is never has enough time for things that he wants to do is offered the opportunity to have himself duplicated. And
is Andie MacDowell in that movie?
Yeah, Andie MacDowell plays his wife
because she was in Groundhog Day, was that the movie before?
Harold Ramis also directed that one.
Right.
And Eugene Levy's in it. Brian Doyle Murray, Julie Bowen. You have quite a few.
Julie Bowen was in that?
Yeah, she plays. I think she plays somebody that.
What year was it?
'96.
It's the same year Happy Gilmore came out. Was she like? She's in all these.
Probably on her way up.
On her way up.
But yeah, I enjoy it because it's fun. It's if you like Michael Keaton doing comedy, you get Michael Keaton, I think 4 different ways. So
okay.
He plays his normal self, then he gets cloned, and his clone is kind of more of the masculine side of him, and then he gets cloned again because he still doesn't have enough time to do all the shit that he wants to do. And then that clone is more of a feminine side of him.
Okay.
And then eventually one of the clones get a clone because they didn't want to do some of the housework or some of the bullshit they didn't want to take care of. But it's fun seeing Michael Keaton play off of himself. But, I mean, it's just a great comedic role for him. It's lighthearted. I mean, it's got a decent, I guess, moral or theme.
Right.
And I don't know. I just always enjoyed it as a solid movie, but
is it a romantic comedy though?
So he does end up getting into like relationship problems, which you kind of can't dodge in a movie, but I definitely wouldn't categorize this as a romantic comedy.
Okay. That's not the centerpiece of the story.
I feel like it's not. I mean, one, it's not a will they won't they kind of thing. It's just the central problem. Yeah, he does have marital strife in this movie, but that's not the central issue. The central issue is he is bombarded by work, his family life. He doesn't have time for himself, and he feels out of control of his own situation. And it's a story about a man trying to get that back under control. which I feel like, at least in our age, we can kind of relate to that more so now than what we could back then.
Is it sort of like Click, meaning that instead of using clones, he's trying to travel back in time because he's
a little bit. It has some of the same things
and...
to where he wants to get to the good stuff first.
Right.
Click, I always kind of thought of as like a high tech version of It's a Wonderful Life a little bit. Right. But yeah, same kind of thematic tones to where.
And I'm only bringing that up because I don't consider Click a romantic comedy because it's not the. It's not the main.
Yeah, it's more about personal struggle,
right?
Or being happy with what you have, kind of a thing. So
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it's a fun movie.
Harold Ramis is awesome.
Yeah,
so.
it's a competent comedy, and which is like as far as being on the top 5. But I mean, it's not gonna change your life. But
was it written by him? Harold Ramis?
It was written by 3 writers.
Okay,
but I think like some of the writers were like from National Lampoon, so
gotcha.
But I think it's definitely worth a watch, and especially if you're a fan of Michael Keaton.
Right, he's great.
And anything like I wish he would just do comedy
all the time.
All the time. Like I think that's when he's at his best.
Yeah, I don't want no scrubs. Comedy. Don't be chasing waterfalls.
Yeah. Are you doing that on purpose? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that is.
Did you hear they're coming out with Beetlejuice 2?
Finally, like I'm not finally as in I've been waiting for this,
see it.
But this is that's one of those movies that has just been in production hell because like forever it's like Beetlejuice, like there's one working title is like Beetlejuice Goes to Hawaii or something like that, or Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian, but they've been talking about Beetlejuice 2 for probably 20 years. And it's just recently I've seen casting announcements and everything else because I think Jenny Ortega, whoever played Wednesday, is in it. Michael Keaton's in it, and then I think they announced a couple other people. But
I know. I hope it's more along the lines of because I love Beetlejuice. Mm-hmm. I hope it's along the lines of Top Gun, Maverick in terms of.
Yeah, and not Dumb
what
and
it
Dumber
could
2.
be versus Dumb and Dumber 2 or anything that's come out in the past 3 years.
Yeah, one thing I hope they maintain is just kind of like the mystical element because that's one of my favorite parts about Beetlejuice is just the fun stuff like drawing a chalk line on the door, knocking 3 times, then going into the afterworld.
Yeah,
and seeing that and just those little nuggets of the afterlife or how things work in that arena without just diving straight into it, but just enough to kind of pique your curiosity or kind of make you go, oh, that's kind of clever.
Yep.
I hope they have some of that stuff instead of just rehashing the same shit they did.
Yeah, I just recently watched Bill and Ted Face the Music because I love Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It's just not good.
No.
It just drains all the fun out of it. Mm-hmm. And they substitute it for like a green screen and it sucks.
Yeah.
It's just, why make it? Just stop.
Because someone had money and said, make it.
I know. What are you going to do?
So, but all right. That's my number 5.
Multiplicity.
Your number 5.
My number 5 is Kevin Smith's debut, Clerks. Yes.
It's my honorable mention.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, 4 out of 5 of my choices are writer-directors. Actually, they're all 4 out of 5 are writer-directors, and 4 out of 5 are their debuts. So I don't know if that's... It's like you always said. They have forever to write their first movie, and
and then
maybe that's why.
1 year to write their second.
Right. Clerks stands out because it was made for no money, and you can tell. Mm-hmm. It's very raw.
$22,000.
Right. Isn't that crazy? And for that amount of money, for it to come out the way it did is just...
Mm-hmm.
The characters are great. The actors in it just play them so well. It's very engaging and entertaining. These nonsense conversations they're having throughout the movie.
Yeah.
They're just, for whatever reason, they're interesting. Mm-hmm. And especially when you're a kid, you're like, is this what adults talk about all day? This makes no sense.
Some of them do.
Yeah, exactly. As you get older, you realize that, people do talk about nonsense all day.
Yeah. The the thing I love about that movie is, obviously the dialogue. Yes. So it was this movie, and then shortly after Reservoir Dogs came out, and it was a lot of pop culture references. So before,
it was cool to do that.
yeah, and these were the first movies that were doing that, because a lot of movies just wouldn't talk about other movies or other pop. I mean, if they did talk about or make a reference to pop culture, it'd be something like very, very old or something that everyone would get, to where Clerks was more nerd pop culture. They were talking about Jaws, Star Wars, like the moral implications of doing a trench run on the Death Star, and did he just murder 500,000 people, or do the stormtroopers kind of be responsible for who their employer is, kind of a thing? So whose fault? Like, they would have nerdy conversations like that, and a lot of the movie was that kind of stuff that you haven't really seen before.
Right, and the fact that it feels like a documentary. Like, it feels like if you went down to your local convenience store, like, I mean, the way me and you grew up, and all movies before this were, everything was polished, and it didn't seem like it was taking place like right down the street. This felt like it took place right down the street with people that ran the convenience store.
Yeah, and it worked out because the black and white gave it that security footage look. But also it was cheaper to buy black and white film.
Yeah.
And it also helped for daylight scenes and stuff like that, just from the logistics of him having to make the movie, because he shot it at night at the convenience store he worked at. And
this is the first black and white movie I ever saw.
Yeah.
That I remember liking.
I probably would agree with that for myself as well. Maybe It's a Wonderful Life. I don't remember if I really got
I don't
into
remember.
That. But I do remember it being black and white was a thing, because it was a recent movie. It had come out. A lot of people were talking about it, and it was black and white.
Which didn't make sense.
Yeah, it didn't, because why
would you do that?
Why isn't it in color? Well, it's an independent movie. What's that? And so, because the independent movie scene was also like kind of becoming into the limelight of its own, Sundance was starting to get bigger and everything else. Before now, Sundance is just another distribution film festival where people go to find distributors, and their quote-unquote independent movie will be shown there, kind of a thing.
Right.
So.
And this movie introduces you to a man called Randall. Got a little clip here.
Right.
My favorite line that he has in the whole movie.
Junkie.
Cute cat. What's its name?
Annoying customer.
Fucking dickhead.
Randall's like one of those characters that doesn't really exist in real life, but you want him to. Like, you want to be friends with that guy because he speaks.
Or you're friends with somebody you think is more like Randall.
Right.
But no one thinks they're Randall. Everyone kind of wants to have the sense of humor as Randall, but everyone has that friend. Oh, he's probably kind of close to Randall, but not quite there.
Yeah. And there was also, like, I don't remember seeing a movie that had conversations between, like, relationship conversations like the one I'm going to show here, which is one of the funniest things in the whole movie. Probably my favorite scene.
Yeah.
You sucked that guy's dick?
Yeah, how do you think I knew that he...
Wait, but you said you only had sex with 3 different guys. You never mentioned him.
Because I never had sex with him.
You sucked his dick.
We went out a few times. We never had sex, but we fooled around.
Oh, my God. Why did you tell me you only had sex with 3 different guys?
Because I did only have sex with 3 different guys. That doesn't mean I didn't just go with people.
Oh, my God. I feel so nauseous.
Sorry, Dante. I thought you understood.
I did understand. I understood that you had sex with 3 different guys, and that's all you said.
Please calm down.
How many?
Dante.
How many dicks have you sucked?
Go.
How many?
Wait, shut up a second and I'll tell you. Jesus. I didn't freak out like this when you told me how many girls you fucked.
This is different. This is important. How many? Well?
Something like 36.
What? Something like 36?
Who are you boys?
Wait, what is that anyway? Something like 36. Does that include me?
37.
I'm 37?
Going to class.
Oh, my God. 37. My girlfriend sucked 37 dicks.
In a row?
So good. That is great writing, man.
Yeah,
It's little touches like that in a row, and then pausing in mid-fight to give the customer change.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something that would happen in real life,
Yeah.
but in a normal movie, they would like, brush over that stuff and kind of just let the fight go to its natural conclusion without interruption, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it's yeah. The dialogue in that movie is
really good.
It's top notch, and it's a yeah. It's weird that I don't know if Kevin Smith lost the touch for it, or if he just lost interest in writing dialogue. But that was always. 'Cause I haven't seen Clerks 3.
I haven't either,
and I'm assuming it's not great because a lot of people haven't talked about it. When Clerks 2 came out, a lot of people said, "Oh yeah, it's a nice sequel for the movie and everything, or for the stories and of those characters." But I don't know if he's lost his touch with the dialogue, but that was always the clever things with his movies, whether it be Dogma or Mallrats or Chasing Amy and Clerks, is his ability to write dialogue and just that quick banter, conversation.
Well, I mean, he's very talkative, and he's a one of the first podcasters ever, so he can definitely carry on a conversation, which makes sense because he's a good writer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
anyway, that's my number 5.
Nice.
Clerks.
Yeah, it's a good number 5. My number 4 is The Birdcage.
Oh.
And this is, I think I saw this maybe once, and it was probably not even in the 90s. The first time I think I saw this was probably early 2000s.
Okay.
I caught it on either HBO or Cinemax or Showtime or like Stars or one of those cable movie channels, and it came on. This is the movie that kind of made me fall in love with Nathan Lane.
Okay. Wait, it wasn't Pumbaa?
Yeah, no.
Or Timon, sorry.
No.
It wasn't The Lion King?
It wasn't, but it's so goofy and over the top, but it kind of tugs at the heartstrings a little bit, and it's just fun. It's just one of those chaotic. It feels like it could be on a stage, like a theater play, because it mainly takes place in this cabaret in one single location.
Yep.
And if you haven't seen Birdcage, it's a gay cabaret owner and his drag queen companion agree to put up a false straight front so that their son can introduce them to his fiance's right-wing moralistic parents. And directed by Mike Nichols, who also directed The Graduate.
Which is one of your favies.
Yes. And stars Robin Williams as Armand Goldman, who plays the gay cabaret owner. Nathan Lane plays the drag queen companion, and Gene Hackman plays Senator Keeley, who's the right-wing senator, as Diane Wiest, yeah, Callista Flockhart, Christine Baranski, Hank Azaria, and it's great characters. The acting, Nathan Lane is fantastic at it.
He's great.
It's
I haven't seen it in a while, but I do like that movie.
Yeah,
it is funny.
It's political without taking itself too seriously, and it's not. I don't feel like it. I don't want to say threatening. It's not It doesn't feel divisive when you watch it.
I wouldn't say so.
And but it's. I mean, the characters and the acting is fantastic.
I don't think it, and also I don't think it panders.
No, it doesn't.
Does that make sense? I don't think it panders. Because you can get caught up in that really easily.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. Is it doesn't pander to where it doesn't like just stop dead in its tracks. It lets it do its thing, and I love it for it. But yeah, asking me in the 90s if this would have been my top 5, no, because I hadn't even seen it yet. But it's just definitely one that grew on me. Christy and I watch this every once in a while, and because I think I had watched it once, and then I think we were flipping through Netflix one time when we first started dating, and she's like, "Oh, The Birdcage." I was like, "Oh, yes, let's watch that." And
it's one of those movies that you can just put on though. It's very rewatchable.
Oh yeah.
Gene Hackman's great in it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the perfect. Does he always play like a senator? I feel like he always plays a senator. Like when he's in a comedy, he
Unless
plays
he's playing
a senator.
Lex Luthor.
Yes.
Yeah, he always plays that. Usually the hard-nosed.
Yeah, the hard-nosed dry guy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it, especially if you like Robin Williams, if you like Nathan Lane. But it's got quick banter back and forth. Characters great. Hank Azaria is awesome in it. Yeah, it's fun. It's
Like Hank Azaria never plays like just a normal person. He's the crazy effeminate gay boy in the Birdcage. He's Apu on The Simpsons. He's what's the character he plays in Mystery Men?
Oh God, the
silver spoon.
Yeah,
I don't remember
something. Yeah,
or he's the dude who walks the beach and has that weird accent. And Along Came Polly.
I'm a pea, a scuba,
Ruben.
Yeah, he's the most jacked dude ever.
Oh,
like
I know.
Just randomly.
Oh,
or he'll play in Friends.
Yeah.
Phoebe's love interest goes
yeah,
to Minsk.
Dr. Minsk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. So The Birdcage, number 4.
It's great, man. My number 4 is Friday.
Oh. Also my honorable mention.
It's a great movie. This is more definitely nostalgia for me because I watched this repeatedly on repeat when I was growing up because it was one of those movies that you knew you weren't supposed to watch because you were too young for it. But for whatever reason, I got away with watching it. My mom let me because it feels kind of like a hangout movie.
Yeah.
Like, they're in the hood and it's set in the hood, but it doesn't feel like it's set in the hood because the characters are so like non-threatening for the most part.
Yeah.
And it's like you're just hanging out on the porch with them all day.
Yeah.
Which is why I like it. And they have hilarious conversations throughout the day and people just it's one of those like it's like Dazed and Confused almost where it's like you know these people, you understand them and you're just hanging out with them for the day.
Yep.
And their interactions with people that just walk by.
Yeah.
That's why I like it.
I like Chris Tucker.
Oh yeah, it's coming out party.
Yeah, fantastic in it. I also like. There was other there had been other movies that I had seen previously, like Boys in the Hood, or other, I guess, like black cinema movies that took place kind of like in the inner city or whatever that I really couldn't relate to just because we didn't grow up in South Central.
Getting shot at
We're
all
in
the time, doing
Midwest.
drugs.
Yeah. In like the hood, just because the dynamic between the father and son was something I could easily relate. Like,
Sure.
Like I've been smelling your shit for 22
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
You can smell mine for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And shit like that, or like, oh, you got fired. How the hell did you get fired from your job? Or like
On your day off.
or like you pour cereal. You better put some water on that damn shit. And like,
Or the mom making breakfast and he's like, and then she gets the plate ready and he's like, where's mine at? Well,
Yeah.
I didn't say I was making it for you. Like that's something that
and
what happened
because
to me.
and that it was a good home life that he grew up in, and and I mean for the most part his neighborhood was fine. I mean I think it was supposed to be the hood, but it didn't feel like the hood just because the only reigning threat was like a neighborhood bully.
Yep.
And then obviously the drive-by, but that was just because Smokey was doing
drugs,
doing shit that could happen
anywhere. Yeah.
So
And you had the neighbor that loved his lawn and was always watering his lawn and didn't want you to get on his lawn. Who hasn't, I mean, it could be
you all
anywhere.
had everyone had that neighbor, and and I guess for being a when did that movie come
95.
out? 95. So I was a 12-year-old white kid growing up in white Middle West small town. This is the first movie I was able to relate to characters like that took place in Southern California. So far away. But yeah, like you said, just good hangout movie. And yeah, just hanging out with the day.
And like all the different character actors that show up in the movie, like John Witherspoon, who's his dad, and he's so funny in it, and then Bernie Mac and Anthony Johnson. And I got a couple clips here that just are awesome. Here's the Bernie Mac one.
Shut up, man. Here come the pastor.
For what? Probably smoke bud too.
How you doing, Brother Craig? How you doing? I'm all right. Well, I see, but yeah, Sister Jones in? Nope. Neither's Brother Jones.
They both at work.
Well, your ass need to be nimble.
Excuse me, brother. What we call drugs at 74th Street Baptist Church, we call us sin.
Well, around here, between Normandy and Weston, we call this here a little twin.
Wow.
Nigga.
So, like, when you see that, like, it's still funny now, but when you see that when you're, when I was 11, it's just so funny.
Mm-hmm.
So over the top, so good. And here's the one with Anthony Johnson.
Smokey! 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 Smokey, what the hell you doing back here? Hey, nothing, man. Hey, I'm fixing something. Hey, just stay over there. But I thought you wanted me to wash your car. Hey, man, wash it later. Stay over there.
Smokey, you know I ain't the smartest man in the world, but from over here, it look like you taking a shit.
Ezel, get the hell on my back. Come on, man.
Oh, look, let's smoke. You been eating corn, huh?
Oh, get the hell on my back. All right, man.
All right, man, but look, between me and you, man, when you're done, I'll clean all that shit up for you for $2. Ugh.
Hey, Ezel, what? You better not tell nobody, man.
Man, I'm not, man.
Keep it on the down low.
All right, I'm not like that. I'm gonna keep it down, bro. La, la.
Hey, Smokey back here taking a shit. Ezel!
Well, I ain't gonna tell nobody else.
Anyway,
Who directed that? F.
Gary Gray. This is his debut. Yep. Ice Cube wrote it with DJ Pooh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and DJ Pooh played a character. He played. This is my grandma gave me this chain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah. Anyway, that's my number 4. Great movie. See Friday if you haven't seen it.
yes, it's fantastic. My number 3 is, and I think we've already talked about this. Grumpy Old Men. It was on one of your lists for Thanksgiving, I think.
Yep.
Or maybe it wasn't Christmas. Yeah, it was Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Yeah. What a great movie.
So yeah, Grumpy Old Men, and this is one that probably would not have been on my top 5 if Christy and I had watched this like 2 months ago.
Really?
Or it was before Christmas. But yeah, just I forgot how funny that movie
It really is.
And Burgess Meredith kills it.
So good.
I mean,
so
he's like
good.
80, like in his late 80s in this movie,
Yeah.
and his timing is just
Impeccable.
so good.
Yeah.
And his line delivery, everything. But obviously the
He's like the male Betty White.
yeah. He is so good. Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon play so well off of each other. I mean, their chemistry is phenomenal. And it's, I mean, good story. I mean, if it's about these two older fishermen, and they start competing after a girl. You can kind of, I mean, and it's mainly, I feel like it's their relationship that it's about, not who's trying to get the girl. It's about their friendship.
Yeah, it's about their friendship.
And but just the tiny things that they put in there, like Burgess Meredith threatening to separate them again.
Yeah,
like he's treating them like they're kids. He's like late 80s, and then John Gustafson and Max are supposed to be like in the early 60s.
Yep.
And he's threatening to separate them like they're kids, and he's treating them like they're kids. And
well, he always says, "Goddamn kids."
Yeah. So
I like when John gives his dad like a beer, and he takes all the groceries.
Yeah.
Keep the change.
Pop, shouldn't you be smoking light filtered cigarettes? I'm 93 years old. You think it matters? But yeah, it's great. I mean, I remember when trailers showed this, it was just so off the wall that, oh my word, older people are saying insults, slinging back and forth at each other. And
well, it's like, what do you think they do?
Yeah,
they're still human beings, you know.
Yeah. But rewatching it again, what didn't strike me as much when I was younger watching it, just because lack of awareness or whatever, is, I mean, when you think about the history between the two characters, as far as like, because you see a picture of them next to each other, and they probably just grew up in those houses, took them over from their parents.
Yep.
And it's just, this is what happens when two best friends live next to each other their entire lives.
Yeah, you're right.
To where they can't stand each other anymore, but they also can't, they can't not be around each other.
Yep.
They don't show that longing, but when one of them starts to have health issues, then you see, I mean, you see how much they kind of care for each other. But
and it helps that it's Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau are like two of the best that ever do it.
Yeah.
They're so good.
Yeah, because they were in The Odd Couple back in the like 60s or 70s, and I mean then they did a sequel to Grumpier Old Men, which is Burgess Meredith is still great at it.
Yeah,
but,
he is.
But this one's definitely the better one. But I mean they've done several movies together, and their chemistry is fantastic.
Yeah, and they can pull the dramatic just as well as the comedic stuff. So it's very good.
So yeah, Grumpy Old Men number 3.
Nice. My number 3 is The Big Lebowski. Not a directorial debut. This is the Coen brothers, but they did write it. And I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen The Big Lebowski.
Would assume if you...
But it's tough to give a summary of what the movie's about because that's what the Coen brothers do so well with comedies.
Yeah, I would say...
organized chaos.
Jeff Bridges plays a hippie in the
Vagabond?
in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And he... some Europeans break into his apartment, piss on his rug.
Yes.
And
why do they do that?
Because he owes them money. And they confuse him with a wealthier guy with the last name of Lebowski. And so they piss on the dude's rug, and it really tied the room together.
It really
so
did.
Jeff Bridges decides, you know what? I'm going to get my rug replaced.
Yep.
And so he goes to talk to the other Lebowski, the rich one, to get a rug. And hilarity ensues.
From there, it's chaos.
Yep. But it's kind of like other Coen movies. It's kind of like a mystery element, like a kind of Private Eye, a little bit like
a little bit
mystery that you kind of have to solve and stuff. And
but it's just it's ridiculous chaos. Which I think they amped it up a little bit in Burn After Reading. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yes.
Another comedy.
One time.
Where no one knows what's going on, even the characters, but somehow the Coen brothers make the story fit and somehow make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I feel like that's how this story evolved. I don't know how they wrote this, but it's like, okay, we're going to start here. And then this happens. Like, we don't know where we're going with it, but we're going to make these things happen, and somehow we're going to have, Walter.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have John play Walter, and he's gonna do funny Walter shit, and then we'll have Donnie, and then Jeff will just kind of anchor the movie throughout, and it's just great. The dialogue's great. I mean, they're great writers, obviously. John Goodman steals the show.
Oh yeah,
relating everything to Vietnam, and just
my friends did
going
not
on rants
down in the muck.
Jonathan Turturro is great in it.
Yeah.
I think they actually have a spinoff, right? Where he plays Jesus.
Yeah, he plays. I don't think it went well.
But he's not even in the movie for that long. He's just so memorable.
Mm-hmm.
He's in it for like 2 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it's him polishing his balls.
Yeah.
It is a good movie, and it's not. I don't want to say it's like a high bar to get into, but a lot of people don't like. They try and watch it, and they're like, "Oh, it just wasn't for me." Like, and so it's not, I guess, easily accessible. I mean, I feel like it probably is more now, but back in the 90s, it may not
definitely
have been.
Wasn't. No. Well, it's definitely geared towards my sense of humor. I know what they're going for here, and I find it hilarious.
Yeah.
Just like the casual. I have a clip that it encompasses why I think it's so funny.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's listen to it.
Let's listen to this. Yes.
Fucking Santana. That creep can roll, man.
Yeah, but he's a pervert, dude.
Yeah.
No. He's a sex offender with a record. He did 6 months of Chino for exposing himself to an 8-year-old.
Huh.
When he moved to Hollywood, he had to go door to door to tell everyone he was a pederast.
What's a pederast, Walter?
Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
Every time. It gets me every time. It's just exasperated. Can't give another ounce of energy to Donnie and just says shut the fuck. Like normally he screams it, but he's just so exhausted by it at this point that he just kind of lets it eke
which
out
is
of
like
his,
a through line.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, Donnie.
You mentioned that you thought the 80s had more of a plot. See, this is a movie I think had more plot, and because a lot of the comedic elements in this movie feel very, very organic, and to where it's just like in that world. It doesn't feel.
Yeah.
It's very over the top visually, but that's done with reason. Throughout the movie, like whenever he daydreams or he's knocked out or something, then he kind of visualizes things in his head. But and some of the characters are over the top, but it's all kind of believable in this weird world.
It makes sense in the world.
Yeah, and
in the comedy, it's sort of like inside joke comedy, which I love. Like they constantly telling Donnie to shut the fuck up, and like it really tied the room together, didn't it, dude? Like they always harping back to the inside joke.
Or it could just be one of my favorite comedic bits. It's just a small bit, but when the dude goes to visit Jackie Treehorn, who I think is a producer of porn movies, because he's trying to track down Bunny or something.
Yep,
and
Ricardo Montalban.
Yeah,
the guy from Roadhouse.
And so he's it's also Khan.
Yeah.
So he's sitting on the couch and the guy's talking to him, and then all of a sudden like, he gets a phone call. He's like, He like puts the phone in the crook of his neck. He's like, And he grabs a pen, starts writing down on a piece of paper. He's like, okay. Rips off the piece of paper, and then he's like, I'll be right back. Walks out of the room. And then the dude in there, which kids, if you are trying to figure out what someone wrote down, you could kind of graze over it with a pencil or a crayon to kind of get an indentation to see what was pressed, like based on how much pressure they used. So he goes over there and takes a pencil and he does the shading to see what he wrote down. And all it is just like a stick figure with a humongous dick. He gets done. He like looks at it, reveals it. It's like
what's going on?
It's like he doesn't say anything. It's just like, what the fuck is that? And then he goes back to the couch. It has nothing to do with anything.
Well, I think maybe they set that up because the cop opens the dude's wallet like 15 minutes later and it's the same picture. It's like, what's going on? It's a great movie. Anyway, that's my number 3.
I'm starting to like your top 5 better than mine.
It's a great movie. I recommend it if you haven't seen it. It's really funny.
Yeah. The one thing I like about it too is I feel like that and Fargo are total polar opposites.
Mm-hmm.
And not only as far as humor, because Fargo is definitely very, very dry humor, but also visual storytelling to where it's all white landscape, whites and blacks and grays, and like there's very little color. It's very drab, very desert style, to where The Big Lebowski is more like extravagant, very decorated sets, bright, lots of colors, and all that stuff.
Yeah. Especially the dream sequences. They're definitely, more colorful.
Yep. So, my number 2 is My Cousin Vinny.
Oh, great movie. That was one of my honorable mentions.
And that came out in 92. I don't think your sister has seen this all the way through yet.
Really?
Every time we tried, and this probably isn't a great vote of confidence for the movie, but every time we watch it, she falls asleep. Granted, we start it at 8 p.m., so
That's cutting it close,
her bedtime's at 8:10. So My Cousin Vinny came out in 92, and it stars Joe Pesci and Marissa Tomei, Ralph Macchio, Fred Gwynn, and Bruce McGill, Lane Smith. So it's about 2 New Yorkers get accused of murder in rural Alabama while on their way back to college. They call in the help of one of their cousins, a loudmouth lawyer with no trial experience. And Joe Pesci plays a loudmouth lawyer.
Yep.
And he's from New York. And the 2 kids that get arrested are from New York, and they're in the middle of BFE, Alabama.
Yep.
And then hilarity ensues because city people come down to the south.
Fish out of water story.
Yeah. So, but it is the dialogue's good. It's a pretty good courtroom movie.
It is.
It's a good little mystery movie.
Yep.
And
and Joe Pesci knocks it out of the park.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
Joe Pesci's
so good.
great. His interactions with the judge, Fred Gwynn, is fantastic.
Yep.
Just, but then also him and Joe Pesci and Marissa Tomei, they have pretty good chemistry together to where it's not so much, it's not like a doting relationship or anything like that. It feels kind of more realistic to where like there's a scene where Joe Pesci is kind of patting himself on the back, and he's like, "Oh, look, I got all of the prosecutor's files because I sweet talked him and blah blah blah."
Yeah,
and she's been reading this book as far as court procedures.
It's like 2,000 pages.
It's like 2,000 pages. It's like The Stand, and she's been reading this book little by little, and she's like. And she's just kind of fed up with his attitude to where he's like, "You want to know why he gave you his files?" Like, "I already told you why." He's like, "He has to. It's called disclosure, you dickhead." But those two together are great. Marissa Tomei plays his fiance, and who happens to be kind of a car savant almost, but she knows a lot about cars.
She's the Rain Man of cars.
Yeah, and but the Joe Pesci plays a typical New Yorker.
I mean, they almost have like a brother-sister relationship, but
a little bit.
You forget, and because once they start to get romantic, like, oh yeah, that's right, they're a couple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, you get the sense they've been together for a while.
Yeah,
and one of the things in the movie is that she said that she would marry him once he wins his first case.
Right,
kind of a thing. So. But
what do you think of the Karate Kid in it? Do you like Ralph Macchio?
I do, and then but the first time I saw this, that's all I knew him from.
Yeah,
and he's fine in it.
He's fine.
He doesn't have a major role. His buddy Mitchell, played by Mitchell Whitfield, Stan Rothenstein. I think he's funnier in the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ralph Macchio is like not a huge role in it, but he does fine. The good characters in this are like the witnesses, the prosecutor, the judge, and just like the town people that Joe Pesci runs into, and like the shit he has to deal with, and everything else. But it's great. Without spoiling anything, definitely.
Yeah, because you're right. It is a nice little mystery if you haven't seen it.
Yep.
It's kind of cool.
And people are written almost like real people. And
they are.
And yeah, it's nice.
It is nice. It's really good. All right, my number 2.
Yes.
This is tough because the Farrellys just went on a run in the 90s. So I had to like, all right, dude, is it something about Mary? Is it Kingpin? Me, Myself, and Irene. It was almost in the 90s. They just went on a roll. But I landed on Dumb and Dumber. That's number 2. So I hadn't watched it in a long time. So this is a movie that this is probably the movie I watched the most growing up because it was just it's tailored for a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
So when I rewatched it, I'm like, is it going to hold up? Because I mean, it's 12-year-old humor, and it holds up.
Does it hold up, or is it your memory
does.
that it holds up?
No.
Yep.
It holds up. And I think I narrowed down why it is because I was thinking about that because I saw the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the difference: the sequel, well, in the original, it doesn't feel like they're in on the joke.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just dumb. And their dialogue and their responses to the situations are what dumb people would do.
Mm-hmm.
In the sequel, it's like they are in on the joke, and they know that they're supposed to act stupid and dumb, and so things get over the top, and it's like it's a gag, and it's not what
it's not what those characters would do.
They react the way the Three Stooges would react, over the top and just playing to the audience because they know they're part of a movie. When in the original, it's not like that. It's like they're reacting how less intelligent people would react.
Okay.
That's why. So I think like Jim Carrey, it's his coming out. He's not so over the top Jim Carrey in it, like in The Mask or in Ace Ventura. It's kind of dialed back a little bit.
Did this come out in the same year?
Well, 94 was Jim Carrey's year.
Yeah.
So it was Ace Ventura, then The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, all in 1994. Yeah. So I feel like he dialed back. So Ace Ventura, he's full-fledged Jim Carrey. He dials it back in The Mask, and he dials back. I think it's the perfect dialed back Jim Carrey comedic performance to the point where you're not like a straight man like Bruce and Bruce Almighty or Liar Liar or something like that. But I mean, every 5 minutes is a memorable line or quote or scene that just stands out. It's just funny. Jeff Daniels is great. I think you need, because they talked about casting another comedian in that role, and I think they did a good job of hiring Jeff Daniels, because if they would have hired another comedian, I feel like it just would have been two comedians trying to top each other.
Yeah.
And it would have been distracting and stupid.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, Jeff Daniels, I remember watching it for the first time and not remembering seeing him anywhere except Speed.
Yeah.
And
like Terms of Endearment, some like dramatic roles. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was in Pleasantville later on, and what's that? What was that HBO show that he was in?
Newsroom.
Newsroom.
Yeah.
But yeah, he mainly does, more serious stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, the Farley brothers definitely had. I was debating because I couldn't do Something About Mary.
Because romantic comedy?
Because it was a romantic comedy, and it was already on my romantic comedy list.
That's right, it was.
And then I thought, I was like, well, Kingpin, because I remember watching Kingpin quite a bit.
Yeah, I did too.
And in Dumb and Dumber, I feel like it's Pulp Fiction for me. Like, I've seen it so many times that
it's lost its luster.
I don't think it lost its luster, but like I don't need to see it. Just because
you've seen it so many times. You know, frame by frame. Yeah.
And everyone from our generation just quoted the shit out of it. That Chappelle Show, Austin Powers, so I don't know if it's I just ate too much of it when I was younger. I mean, I still enjoy it. I'm sure there's scenes that I would still audibly laugh.
Yeah. Here, let me give you a clip of. Like, this is what I mean. Like, they're not a part of the joke. It feels like organic dialogue that somebody who's not that intelligent would say.
Mm-hmm.
They just bring back a lot of memories.
What happened, Harry? Some little filly break your heart?
No, it was a girl. Breda Belcher. We stayed in a place just like this. Wasn't as classy, but, nice.
Felcher? From Cranston?
Yeah, you know her?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember you talking about her.
We had the most incredibly romantic time. I thought we were going to be together forever, and then about a week later, right out of the blue, she sends me a John Deere letter.
She give you any reason?
Yeah, I called her up. She gave me a bunch of crap about me not listening to her enough or something. I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention. But the thing that hurt the most is I think she was seeing another guy.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, it's definitely two characters that have heard things that people said, and they just try to repeat it, thinking, "Oh, that's how people talk."
That they're applying it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Deere, a little filly broke your heart. Like, no, it was a girl. Oh, okay. It's like them not really knowing what the cliches or colloquialisms actually mean that they're using.
Yep. See, and that's a scene that I didn't. You didn't laugh at that when you're little. You laugh when he's like farting with a lighter.
Yeah.
Or when they're stuck together because he pissed on him, and they're snot. That's that stuff. But it's the little things like that when you get older and you kind of realize that it's pretty good dialogue. It's funny. Anyway, that's my number 2. Dumb and Dumber.
My number 1. This is the one I knew was going to be on the top 5.
Okay.
And
let's see if it's the same as mine.
I doubt it.
You doubt it?
Yeah, I guarantee it's not.
Okay.
Because I bet I know what your number one is.
Okay.
It is Office Space.
That's my number one.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah!
Without a doubt.
I thought it was going to be Tommy Boy.
No.
Okay.
No. I immediately thought of this when we talked about this category. I'm like, it's Office Space.
Yeah.
I already know it is.
And the reason why I have it as my number one, it still applies today.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's such a good deconstruction of shit office life.
Absolutely.
Or just life in corporate America. And
it's so spot on. It's almost a documentary.
Yeah.
Almost.
It is. And it still applies today.
Yes.
And
if it wasn't for the hypnotization part of it, this would feel like if you put it in black and white, like Kevin Smith was directing it for $22,000 and it was in black and white and the same style as Clerks, you would think it was a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
It's so good.
I'm so happy it's your number one.
So
nice.
But yeah, written and directed by Mike Judge,
and who we love.
Yes,
we're big fans of Silicon Valley.
Yep, and who actually he wrote this because when he used to work in software, that was the inspiration for this, and then he was later inspired to do Silicon Valley as well. He also did Idiocracy. He also did Beavis and Butthead and all
King of the Hill.
But it 3 company workers who hate their jobs decide to rebel against their greedy boss, and it stars Ron Livingston, David Herman, and Ajay Naidu.
No, you didn't know, Judd.
Not gonna work here anymore. But it's got Diedrich Bader, Stephen Root, Gary Cole, Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah.
And it's great.
It's awesome.
I mean, it touches on everything. Traffic to just memos, which have easily been replaced by emails.
Yep. The company man who's almost at retirement and he's worried that the company's going to screw him over.
Yep.
That still applies today.
Yeah. You have the people that just get passed over or just ignored. And then just
terrible leaders.
Yeah, terrible leaders. Just the
consulting
bosses,
groups.
The bosses that just kind of look over everybody and not really paying attention to who's working for them, but just more of, I'm aware of them, and that's how they are. But the only thing I think would be, at least in my experience, would be the consultants.
What about them?
The management of the company takes to heart too much what the consultants say, to where in the past it's like you bring in consultants, here's what you should do, and they're like no, and it's like, what the fuck are you paying these guys for?
Yes, I know.
But it still applies.
It does.
But just as far as like what the consultants say is great. It makes sense because just some
so you physically take the blueprints from the customers, from the engineers to the customers. Well, no, my secretary does.
So why? Well, because engineers aren't people, aren't good people persons. I'm a people person.
Yeah.
That's why being able to deconstruct people's jobs to a minute point and making people try to feel defensive or something.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
Yep.
But it's so good. It's if you're unhappy in your job, I think you would. I mean, even if you are happy in your job, there's things in this movie that just ring true. Everybody. I remember watching this with my parents. My parents said, like, oh my God, this movie is so true.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm their age, when they first saw it, it's still true.
Yep.
And
even when he comes home, like to the shitty apartment with a paper thin wall, like that. I mean, we've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all been in shitty apartments that we've like after a shitty day at work, you have to come home to this shitty place to lay your head.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah, there's like no escape. It's just like the drum.
There's no
the,
escape.
Yeah, it's just the forever gray skies of existence. Of being a faceless person in a cubicle.
Yep.
And your work doesn't really matter.
Yep.
Or maybe it does, but for this person it doesn't. And it's
and it's nice that you have Ron Livingston. God, what's his character's name? I can't believe it. Peter Gibbons. So you have Peter, who hates his job and wants nothing more than to find another job. And then you have someone like Samir, who's like, it'd be nice to have that kind of job security. So he's happy just to have a job and have it for as long as possible. And Michael, same way. He's like, you know, he doesn't like it as much, but he knows that this is where he has to be because he wants to retire someday. He's more pragmatic about it.
What else am I going to do?
Right. What else am I good at?
Yeah. Yeah, so good. Yeah.
That's great. Here, I have a clip. This is this can apply to anybody. It's probably my favorite.
What's happening? We have sort of a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS reports.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry about that. I forgot.
Yeah. You see, we're putting the cover sheets on all TPS reports now before they go out. Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here. I just forgot, but...
What's happening? We need to talk about your TPS reports.
Yeah, the cover sheet, I know. Bill talked to me about it.
Yeah. Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo, and I understand the policy, and the problem is just that I forgot the one time, and I've already taken care of it, so it's not even really a problem anymore.
Yeah. It's just we're putting new cover sheets on all the TPS reports before they go out now, so if you could go ahead and try to remember to do that from now on, that'd be great. All right.
Peter Gibbons. Yes. I have the memo.
Okay. Hey, and speaking of problems, what's this I hear about you having problems with your TPS reports?
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
Anyway, it's like... We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
You have all these bosses and even your friends at some point even like bring up the stuff that you've dealt with all day long.
Because everybody knows everything in the office.
Yes.
And
it's so perfect.
Yeah.
So perfect.
And that's one thing, like, this movie does so well is, it's just those little, little details. And it's like, it's really about nothing, but you could definitely relate it to something in your job. And I mean, even it comments on wait staff and stuff like working in a restaurant. And,
well, even that second boss who comes in, like you've had that boss where they're not even trying to help you be better at your job. They're just doing something to cover their own ass. Like, oh no, I told them about X, Y, and Z.
Oh yeah.
And you know they're just telling it to cover their own ass. They're not telling you to make you better at your job.
Because I think Bill Lumberg is that guy's superior.
Yes.
And so there's my boss. So I'm going to go in there and just make sure that, I'm covered and everything. Because, you know, everyone's worked with that person that throws somebody else under the bus. Like, they're always going to be the hero, but they're never going to be the villain.
Exactly.
Because, they're that insecure about themselves.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah. Here's another clip that's my favorite. I think Diedrich Bader is amazing.
I'm sorry, man. I thought you want to see this. Doesn't that chick look like Ann?
Yeah, a little bit.
Hey, she hasn't been over here in a while. You two still going out?
Yeah. I guess. I don't know. Sometimes I get the feeling like she's cheating on me.
Yeah, I get that feeling too, man.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know, man. I just get that feeling looking at her like she's the type of chick that would just... Ugh. Well, I'm sorry, man. Look, you know, I'm talking out of my ass. I don't know.
Forget it. Don't worry. It's all right. I had a rough day.
Tell me about it, man. Oh, I gotta wake my ass up at 6 a.m. every day this week. Drag up to Las Galindas. Yeah, I'm doing the drywall up there at the new McDonald's.
Let me ask you something. When you come in on Monday and you're not feeling real well, does anyone ever say to you, sounds like someone has a case of the Mondays?
No. No, man. Shit, no, man. I believe you get your ass kicked saying something like that, man.
It's perfect. So it's not just like the dialogue; it's just the reactions of certain. Like that neighbor right there. I know people, and you know people that work like manual labor jobs that can't relate to like office jobs, and like the decorum that is associated
that
with
you have to do. And, and that's the other thing too, is that because most people in the office, like, you want to say shit like that, but you can't.
Exactly.
Because you have to play the political game or some of that bullshit. And to where you just can't be like, just shut the fuck up. Like, just shut up. Like, the one thing I think I would add to this is, like, meetings. Of course, it's more of a new thing now, is, like, virtual meetings.
Yeah, yeah.
And to where you'll have, like, these massive meetings, and it'll be, like, maybe 20 people in there, and then it's mainly one person talking, but then as soon as one person chimes in with something, and the response is, oh, yeah, that's a good point, I roll my eyes, because then I know there's just going to be a fucking avalanche of assholes. Just like, oh, and another thing would be, like, everyone's got to, like, put in their 2 cents, chime in to make sure that they're heard, to make sure that they're contributing to the team. They're doing all, like, just shut the fuck up so we can shut down the meeting and I can get back to work.
Right.
It's like,
yeah,
it's like this high school faux play nice or play date shit. It's it's weird, but
unfortunately, that is the culture that we have all cultivated over the past 3 decades.
But yeah, great. If you haven't seen it, I mean, it's
because it came out in what, 99?
99,
and it's almost 25 years old.
Just got in there.
Still applies.
Yep, still applies, and so it doesn't matter if you've worked any time in the past, probably 50 years.
Yep,
it applies.
It sure does.
I don't think a single. I don't think a movie's been able to compare.
No.
Office life. I mean, even The Office just doesn't even. It's a different kind of show, and it's not doing the same thing. But
well, those Office characters are kind of caricatures of real life people. This is like real.
And they try to do it in their earlier seasons, but that was based off the BBC show, anyways. Which the original BBC show came out slightly, like, just barely after this movie. I think it was like early 2000s when Ricky Gervais created it.
And I like the little touches in the movie where we're like, and next Friday is Hawaiian Shirt Day.
Yeah.
And then they have like the birthdays, and everyone's like, they're sitting there like waiting for their piece of cake, not really conversing with each other. And it's like, oh, this is the highlight of the day. And it's so like sad. Yeah, that's a great word. It's like, get back to work and here's your cake and enjoy it.
And I like in the movie that you don't know what they do. You know they're a software company, but you don't understand what they do, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the company does, because the work doesn't matter, because it just doesn't matter. And which is great. And the only time you see any kind of life from the senior management is when there's an issue in accounting.
Yes.
But
I show up and I kind of space out for an hour. Space out. I just stare at my desk. But it looks like I'm working.
I would say any given week I'd probably do maybe 10, 15 minutes of actual work.
And you could probably... That's probably true.
Yeah.
It's probably true.
And, I mean, it's like any company gets that. I mean, once you get to a decent enough size, it's like...
Yeah.
Like, how much shit could there be that needs to be done?
And you're right. And I tell you, nowadays, companies are so big and decisions have such dire consequences that no one wants accountability, that it's like meeting after meeting after meeting so that we can decide on one thing.
Yep.
So that we're all on the same page, so that no one gets blamed for any consequences that come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, wow.
Yeah.
How do we get anything done nowadays?
Oh, hell. I mean, in even some meetings, they're just useless. Nothing gets decided anyways.
Right.
It's like a bunch of options are thrown out there, and then it's like, oh, time's up. I got another meeting. All right, well, let's... and I'm like, we didn't fucking do anything, guys.
Same time next week.
Yep.
We'll
Keep that ball rolling. Salary.
Can has been kicked. Have a great day, people.
How can we manipulate this report so I still get my bonus?
Exactly. Yeah. All right, so both of our number ones.
Yes.
Office Space. See?
Pleasant surprise.
Sometimes it
I
makes
didn't
sense.
think it was I didn't think it was going to be the same one.
Well, to your point, Tommy Boy almost made my list. But
Yeah. Almost.
I thought these other 5 were better, but I still enjoyed Tommy Boy a lot.
Sister's going to be disappointed.
I know.
She
Did she think it was going to be on there?
Yeah. She was like she's like Tommy Boy's not on your list. I was like, I know. She's like, it'll probably be on my brother's. And I was like, probably.
Didn't make it.
But that was my honorable mention. One of my honorable mentions.
Mine too.
The I had other honorable mentions that I had.
Sure.
Living in Oblivion, which
Okay.
I think you still have.
I still have, then I haven't watched.
You haven't watched it. That's fantastic.
Yes.
That's true to form. Defending Your Life, except that is a romantic comedy.
Okay.
Or I count that as a romantic comedy.
Okay.
And but so I had that on there. Happy Gilmore.
Yeah. Is Happy Gilmore your favorite Adam Sandler movie? Like comedy, I mean.
No. Probably The Wedding Singer.
That was my honorable
or
mention.
51st Wedding Singer.
Yeah.
I think it would probably be more so than 51st Dates. He better character in that one.
Yep.
But Happy Gilmore would probably be my second.
Yeah.
The Tin Cup, but Tin Cup, I don't know. I didn't want to bury it in the like.
That's kind of a good movie.
It is, and it's
like a good movie.
It's probably one of my favorite. Like if we do like top 5 sports movies,
Might be in there.
I think it would be in there. I think it's definitely my favorite golf movie.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's another movie. Like a lot of golf movies typically like romanticize like
Legend of Bagger Vance.
Yeah, that shit. We're like, oh, you got to feel the thing. Blah, blah,
Yes,
blah,
you got to be the ball.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ball doesn't want to be anybody else but the ball.
Like, oh, it's just
Wants
you
to
out on
feel
that
the wind.
field. You're playing against yourself, and they always try and do a Mr. Miyagi bullshit thing with it.
Yeah.
which is fine, but I don't think any of them have nailed it so much as what Tin Cup has, especially with the climax of the movie, to where it's very relatable. And but yeah, anyways, but that was on there. Kingpin, Galaxy Quest, Groundhog Day,
Yep.
Loaded Weapon 1.
Are we gonna do a top 5 like spoof movies?
Like national, we could. That'd be a good one.
That is a good one.
The Chase. Have you ever seen that?
Who's in it?
Charlie Sheen and Christy Swanson.
I've heard of it, never seen it.
It is a parody of.
Okay.
I mean, it's not.
Not in the vein of Top or Hot Shots.
It's not that goofy.
Okay.
But it's kind of over the top, and it's just, it's pretty good. It kind of spoofs a bunch of different things. It spoofs news stories. It spoofs cop shows. It spoofs.
Okay.
But it's not it's not like a scary movie kind of spoof. It's
Is it like Men at Work with Charlie Sheen and Emilio? Like
another honorable mention, which
it's a great
was,
movie. I almost put that on the list.
Men at Work feels a little bit more serious.
Okay.
Chase. Yeah, I don't know. It might be the same.
Yeah.
But
do you like Men at Work?
Yes.
It's a good movie, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise to where me and my childhood best friend, we were having a sleepover, and we were like looking at the video rental shelves, and we didn't know it said funny. Like it said funny on the box. So we're like, all right, we'll give it a shot. Fucking rolling.
Yeah.
Like that was just like, maybe we'll have to do a hidden gem or something on that.
Yeah, that's a great word.
It just like came out of nowhere.
It is.
Thought it was
really
fantastic.
good movie.
And then like Blast from the Past. God, I mean, it's so like basketball. I mean, there's so much shit.
I had basketball almost knocked Clerks out.
Yeah.
But it didn't, because I just thought Clerks was just barely a better movie. Basketball is just like one of those slapstick, like the story doesn't really matter. It's just more situation comedy kind of thing. And but it makes me laugh.
Yeah,
it is very funny.
Clerks is definitely a better movie than basketball. Austin Powers.
Yeah. Do you like the first or the second one better?
And Dirty Work. I think I like the second one better.
I do too.
And I feel like with those movies, the second one I feel like held up, but it was a weird thing with those movies because I remember watching the first one thinking it was hilarious, and then I saw the second one, and the second one just made the comedy that much better to where the first one wasn't as funny.
I know. Yeah, I agree.
And then the third one came out, and I feel like parts of the third one did that, but it fell flat and just it wasn't able to, I feel like, dethrone part 2. But it did have moments of, in part 3, Goldmember, that was still funny, but it was a very weird phenomenon of The Spy Who Shagged Me just being so much more funny than the first one, that the first one lost its humor for me.
Right.
And I've never seen that before. Of course, comedies don't typically get a lot of sequels.
Right.
Direct sequels like that.
Yeah. If we were going to do a list of top 5 sequels that are better than the original, I think Austin Powers 2 would make it.
Yeah.
I think it's funnier.
Mm-hmm. And Heather Graham is...
She's a little, she's terrible on the eyes.
Ugh.
Terrible.
God awful. Fucking put more
what a train
clothes
wreck.
on.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a train wreck.
Jesus.
My honorable mentions were a lot like yours. A couple that I'll mention that we haven't talked about yet. Dazed and Confused.
Yep.
But that's more of just a good movie.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie.
That I feel, and I thought about those movies like Dazed and Confused is coming of age.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, it has comedic elements into it, but it's a slice of life or coming of age movie. Same thing with Grosse Point Blank was on there, but I count that as a coming of age kind of movie.
Yeah. American Pie, that's more of a teen comedy to me. It's its own category because I also like Can't Hardly Wait, and I like 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah.
So they're not really, they're in a separate category. We can make a separate list on that. And then South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut is one of the funniest movies ever made to me, but to me it's an offshoot of the show, so I didn't include it in the list. I just feel like it's a long-form episode of South Park. So
I've never seen that movie.
You would laugh your ass off. It is so good.
I love Team America. I love Basketball. I love Orgasmo.
Yeah.
So I've seen other stuff. For some reason, I just never watched. And I liked South Park. It's just I've just never got around to watching.
We'll have to watch it sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to do an episode on it. It's so good. All right, Jay.
Well,
anything else?
Not on my end. So I will say, join us next time.
Yes, please.
As we watch for the first time and talk about the 1976 Sidney Lumet?
Yeah.
Lumet.
Sidney Alexander Dumbass.
Like Buffett. Sidney Lumet film Network.
Yep.
So we have never seen it.
Nope.
A lot of people talk about it.
It's on AFI's list.
Yep. So we'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
So last time we did this was Lawrence of Arabia, way back at our episode 2.
Yes.
So we'll take a look at Network and look at it through modern, first-time virgin eyes and talk about it.
Yep.
So if you are a fan of Network or have yet to see it, I encourage you to watch it.
Yep.
So you can follow along. If you have seen it and you want to listen to two assholes probably butcher the shit and completely miss whatever fucking themes there were.
That's what we're here for.
We're here. Have a listen.
You're here to waste time together, folks.
Yes. we're in it together until we slowly die.
Yes.
And
words to live by, Jay.
Until our lifeline just slowly dims as we hurl off this fucking rock into the space of nothingness. But first, don't worry about comment on our episodes and a cast of donate.
Put it on a Hallmark card, Jay. Yeah. Happy Mother's Day.
But yeah, visit our website, rate us if you enjoy the show.
Yes, please.
We appreciate you listening.
Mm-hmm. We sure do.
You tens of listeners, you.
You're the best 10.
So,
yes.
Yeah. Next time, Network, 1976. Don't know where it's streaming. Search for it. Find it. You guys are big people. You can figure it the fuck out.
Till next time, Jay.
Till next time, Matt.